when I was a little younger, little boy, whenever we used to go to the video rental store, I always loved browsing the horror section. Sometimes me and my friend, we would get like a Friday the 13th movie, or a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or a Child's Play, you know the franchises. But Hellraiser, that was one of those movies that I never rented out as a kid. Mostly because that movie, or at least what we used to think that movie was, always just seemed a little too hardcore. Now, some 20 years later, that's the little bridge I'm making, let's take a look at the Hellraiser franchise. Can you believe there's 9 Hellraiser movies? Wait, what? 10? That's right, a 10th Hellraiser movie came out earlier this month, and I figured, that's a good enough reason for me to take a look at the whole film series. And, well, obviously, let's start at the beginning with Hellraiser. The brainchild of English writer Clive Barker, who adapted his own novella The Hellbound Heart into this 1987 horror movie, which he would also direct himself. So, it's somewhat safe to say that it should be pretty close, true to Clive Barker, the creator's own vision. And well, I like that, so let's take a look. Well, it's all about this little puzzle box. Yeah, better get used to that, because it's kinda the glue that keeps the whole franchise somewhat together. See, this puzzle box is for the real thrill seekers, the ultimate YOLO boys. Since it serves as a key or portal, a gateway to another hellish dimension, where this fine-looking group of people, known as the Cenobites, promises you the ultimate experience in pain and pleasure. Mostly pain though, as it seems, especially after 10 parts, not a whole lot of pleasure. And this gang is of course led by this guy, lead Cenobite. Yeah, he isn't credited as Pinhead until the second movie. Anyway, in the original Hellraiser, we follow Larry as he and his wife move into his parents' old house. Little do they know, however, this is also where Larry's brother, Daredevil Frank, played with the puzzle box a little while before they moved in. And well, this did not end well for him. Luckily though, for him, he somehow escaped Pinhead's pleasure camp, and after it turns out that human blood helps him recover from whatever little pulp the Cenobites left him in after their sessions, Larry's wife, Julia, makes a deal with Frank to help him come back to life, since they had an affair. Which must have been so great that Julia doesn't mind, casually murdering a couple of people to feed her ex-lover. Women, right? Then there's Larry's daughter, Kirsty, who at one point gets a little suspicious and oh. It's a pretty interesting story, and contrary to little me's belief, it's not just Pinhead and friends torturing people for 90 minutes. I've actually timed it. The Cenobites collectively have a screen time of 6 minutes and 18 seconds, which is less than 7% of the total running time. Instead, there's a lot of focus on the faulty family dynamics, which helps you actually care about the main characters. Or hate them, since the Julia character, she really annoys me. But don't worry, there's still time for at least some gore, and it's pretty awesome. Everything here is practical effects, and despite its relatively low budget, there's some pretty outstanding set pieces. And then, of course, we have to talk a little bit about lead Cenobite Pinhead. Portrayed by Clive Barker's childhood friend Doug Radley in all but the last 2 entries in the franchise, I have to say he's pretty iconic. I put him up there with the likes of Michael, Jason and Freddy. And it's not just his looks. He has this great delivery of some quite memorable lines.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Just to show you one of his most famous quotes. I mean, that's a legit threat. So yeah, all in all, the story and themes, the characters, the gore, as well as the music by Christopher Young. Yeah, pretty awesome movie. Hi, it sure is. I'd even go as far as, well, I definitely go as far as to say that it's definitely a classic in the horror genre. Sure, it's not perfect. For example, like what I brought up already, the Juliet character, she kind of annoyed me, which is probably just a personal thing. But also smaller things like, for example, when, spoiler alert, Frank steals his brother Larry's skin, Kirsty, the daughter of Larry, she doesn't notice that, what she thinks is her father, that his head is freaking stitched together. I mean, really, Kirsty? But those are really just small things, really nothing to ruin the fun. So, as you've come to expect from me, I haven't read the original novel the movie is based on, but from what I understand, the movie is pretty pretty close to the source material, except that they left the ending pretty open-ended. So, what do you know, the next year, 88, it's time for Hellraiser 2. Sorry, I mean Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Okay, well, the good news is that despite not directing, Clive Barker at least wrote the story and served as an executive producer. He left the director's chair open for Tony Randall, who worked as an editor on the first movie. So, you know, this still seems like a pretty legit sequel. Let's take a look. After a nice little recap for the easily distracted, Hellraiser 2 continues almost immediately after the events of the first movie, where Kirsty, spoiler alert, the sole survivor, has been admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Here we're witness to the tiresome trope of a character telling the crazy shit that happened to them, with the rest not having any of that, even though it obviously happened. I always hate that in movies. However, as it turns out, her doctor, Dr. Chenard, is a bit obsessed with the whole puzzle box and hellish dimension himself. What are the chances? Also, there's this young mute girl at the same hospital who happens to be an extremely skilled puzzle solver. How convenient. Although, it doesn't look that hard to open the box. It's like, what, 2 steps? Anyway, then the rest of the movie is mostly set in this hellish labyrinth, where it's Kirsty, the mute girl, and the good guy hospital assistant against the evil doctor and newly resurrected Julia from the first movie. And I guess that's the biggest difference with the original movie, the setting. First in a psychiatric hospital, but then mostly in hell, or a hellish dimension. And here it really feels like anything goes. So we get a lot of weird, somewhat surreal shit, which is cool, but at one point you do kind of go like, okay, we get it now. There's no rules. It's all a lot of fun, it just makes a whole lot less sense. Pinhead again is just doing his thing, you know, visiting our dimension to get people that summon him by opening the box and dropping some cool quote bombs along the way, including perhaps my favorite in the whole franchise.
Your suffering will be legendary, even in hell.
Damn, that's so... I mean, that makes your soul being torn apart sound like a walk in the park. But yeah, it does feel like a legit sequel, unlike some later entries in the series. I mean, we get some of the same cast, the gore is there, the look and feel, the music, and somewhat of the same rules. You know, like the doctor slowly bringing Julia back to human form with blood from random victims. Really, dude? That turns you on? Well, I guess he's just not into skinny chicks. But yeah, then there's a cliffhanger and boom, that's Hellraiser 2 for you. Not as great as the first one, but I would still consider it a true Hellraiser movie. So, you know, when it comes to this franchise, I definitely recommend you checking out the first 2 movies, because, you know, if you do, your enjoyment will be legendary, even in Disneyland. Does that work? Speaking of true Hellraiser movies, let's take a look at the third one, which in my opinion, in some people's opinion, might be the last true Hellraiser movie. Are we still numbering them? Ah, great. It's Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. Sounds exciting. Let's see. 2 years after Hellraiser 2, Clive Barker directed Nightbreed, which kinda bombed, causing his production company to go out of business. So, after spending a few years in development hell, Hellraiser 3 eventually came out as the first ever Dimension release. Clive Barker took another step back in the franchise. Here he's just comfortably presenting the movie, with Anthony Hickox of Waxwork fame replacing Hellraiser 2 director Tony Randall. And while I said it still feels somewhat like a true Hellraiser movie, it's also kinda cheesy and bad. Well, I mean, some of the acting definitely isn't great.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's a mystery. But that's all it is, a mystery.
So, who are these people? We basically have a complete new cast, and we're now in a world where you can just buy your Hellraiser memorabilia at the local art gallery. How cool. So, this guy picks up this spinning statue that, it kinda resembles the previous movie's cliffhanger. He's this rich playboy nightclub owner, totally likable guy. And then there's this reporter looking for her next big story when she witnesses this at the local hospital. Ooh, so she's like, hey, that's pretty good. for a story. Her only lead was this pretty girl she saw at the hospital, so how's she gonna find her, this pretty girl?
I'm looking for a girl. She's got dark hair, dark eyes. She's about this tall. She's really, really pretty.
Yeah, exactly. So they get together and start working some shit out. In the meantime, there's this whole thing with Pinhead being separated from his former self. So now he's like pure evil, and the reporter must reunite the human spirit with Pinhead in order to send him back to hell and blah blah blah. You know, it's Hellraiser 3. But in all honesty, this one is kind of fun. Like I said, it's pretty cheesy. We even get lame one-liners.
Ready for your close-up, Joey?
Really? And the once menacing Pinhead now comes across a little goofy every now and then, but I don't know. I mean, there's enough gore and special effects. At one point, Pinhead starts trashing this club, and it's a pretty intense scene. I mean, it's not good that after 2 sequels we're already just kind of working from one gore sequence to the next, but I'm not complaining, because I know about the upcoming sequels. It's still a somewhat worthy entry in the series. There's some connection to the first 2 movies, and while I do miss the other Cenobites, I mean, I always thought that the original gang was for life, Pinhead still has some memorable dialogue. Well, mostly monologue. It tried some new stuff with the established Hellraiser universe, and sure, some stuff worked better than others, but overall, not too bad, in my humble opinion. And, well, I guess that's why there's sometimes mention of a Hellraiser trilogy, even though there's 7 more parts in the franchise. I personally have perhaps an even weirder way of grouping the movies, but I'll come back to that later. Because first, we're going to continue with part 4, and we're now entering worrisome territory for different reasons. First of all, this is gonna be the last Hellraiser movie that got an actual theatrical release. The rest is all straight to DVD or video on demand. But maybe even more discouraging, this is where they stop numbering the movies, the titles. Uh-oh, that's never a good sign. So, let's play a little game to see just how bad and generic the titles got from here on. Here's the remaining sequels, but one of these subtitles, is that how you call it? I made up. So which one do you think is the fake one? Well, I actually made all of them up. Well, not per se, they're just taken from other horror franchise sequels. These are all actual titles. But these are the actual Hellraiser titles. Nah, I also made those up. These are the actual titles. Which means that part 4 is called Hellraiser Bloodline. Wow, how exciting. Let's see. So, what are we gonna get here? Pinhead in space? Oh god. Oh no. Then again, Critters did it. Leprechaun went to space the same year as Pinhead, and of course most famously, there's Jason X. So why not? It's not too bad actually, as the space setting is only 1 out of 3 settings in this movie, which was directed by... Uh-oh, it's another red flag. See, Alan Smithy, it's not a person. Simply put, it's an officially recognized pseudonym that directors can use when they want to dissociate themselves from a movie, usually due to the end product not resembling what they had in mind. So, what did we end up with in Bloodline? Well, in space, this guy is having a robot solving the puzzle box, which summons Pinhead, but right at that moment, he's taken away by some guards, and now he has to explain what he's been up to. So, after part 2 teased us and part 3 went deeper into the Pinhead backstory, this space marine sits down to tell the elaborate backstory of the whole Hellraiser mythos, covering 2 timelines, starting in Paris late 18th century. And like I said, I never read Clive Barker's original novel, so I don't know if this is really part of the Hellraiser canon, but it has to do with this French toy maker who is commissioned to make the infamous puzzle box for this libertine fancy pants and his assistant Adam Scott in a wig. Little did the toy maker know, however, he made a portal to hell, somehow accidentally, which he eventually regrets, but it's now too late and his bloodline, get it, is now cursed. Cut to 200 years later and there's this whole story about, you get it, there's another descendant and the puzzle box and Pinhead and oh wow, maybe the guy in space is another descendant. It's not great. The story, I'd say it's all a little convoluted. Probably has a lot to do with the whole troubled production, which eventually led to the director taking his name off the movie. But the movie itself, it's actually not too bad. Sure, there's some really bad CGI. I mean, it's the mid-90s now. Pinhead again feels a little less menacing, and this is also where they stopped using Christopher Young's iconic musical themes. But I don't know. At least it feels like it's still part of the whole Hellraiser mythology, if you will. More so because of the story, you know, the backstory, rather than the period piece parts. Hey, it's something. I don't know, guys. While writing this video, I got flashbacks to my Saw franchise videos, where at one point I honestly couldn't tell the sequels apart from each other anymore. And while it's definitely not that bad here with the Hellraiser movies, I do catch myself sometimes thinking like, okay, so what exactly happened in what movie again? So now that we've covered the first 4 movies already, the one good thing about that is that from here on, the sequels don't really have anything to do with each other anymore, which makes it easier to tell them apart. Like I said earlier, I have this specific way of grouping the movies, and if I had to divide them in just 2 groups, I would say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the rest. And part 5, Hellraiser Inferno, surprisingly isn't that bad. Even though the super generic title would suggest otherwise, but hey, let's take a look at this one. We follow this police detective. He's a bit of a shady guy, and he's working on this murder mystery. And oh my god, if it isn't the puzzle box. So he takes it with him, and then one night, while cheating on his wife with a lady of the night, he opens it. I guess he'd never seen a Hellraiser movie before. Anyway, oh shit, the prostitute is dead. So while covering up his tracks, more murders occur where the killer keeps leaving another finger of a child, and all the while he's still trying to solve the case, it also seems like he's going a little insane. It's, well, like I said, it's not bad. Sure, it feels a bit like a generic detective/murder mystery inspired by a mixture of Jacob's Ladder and Seven, with a random bit of Hellraiser thrown in, but that's only because it is. From what I understand, this was just a random script laying around the office where they added Pinhead into the story to cash in on the franchise. Fair enough. Although, in all honesty, I think I'd like this one a lot more if it was indeed just a standalone movie. First of all, Pinhead is in this movie for like, what, a little over 2 minutes? Well, it's exactly 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Again, I timed it. It's a mere 2.3% of the total running time. But when he does show up, mostly towards the end, spoiler alert, it just doesn't seem right. See, as it turns out, plot twist, as soon as the detective opened the box early on in the movie, the rest of the movie doesn't happen. It's all in his head, or well, more likely, you know, while he's in the Cenobites realm or universe dimension. And here, Pinhead serves as some kind of pre-Saw Jigsaw character who's subjecting him to this psychological torture because of his sinful lifestyle. And fine, but who the hell is Pinhead to judge someone's morals? I mean, really? This guy? Out of everything you could have come up with? Okay. And well, that's actually my biggest problem with this movie. The fact that the Hellraiser part of it all it's just so forced. If it were just some random demon overlord judging this guy, fine. But don't use an established antagonist to do your dirty work, you know? And well, maybe also don't add cowboy ninjas in your movies, but besides that, really not bad. It even manages to be somewhat creepy at parts, so yeah, kudos. Initially, I didn't really care for the ending and the plot twist, and the ending is But then I started to approach this movie as not a Hellraiser movie, but just a 2000 straight-to-DVD psychological thriller. And then I was like, it's really not bad. It's actually pretty good. Probably also had a lot to do with the fact that they had a quite capable director in charge, Scott Derrickson, who would go on to direct quite some decent horror movies. And well, with the first 5 Hellraiser movies covered, we're now halfway through the franchise. So I hope you guys will join me in the next video to take a look at the 5 remaining sequels. Also, before I forgot, My parents got me this shirt for my birthday some 2 weeks ago. They based it on this artwork that one of the viewers on my channel made. Really awesome. But just so you know, I don't have merchandise or anything. It was really just a present that my parents got me. So Mom and Dad, if you're watching, thank you. Awesome. Really? How thoughtful. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up really quick, and well, I still hope that you guys will join me in the next video to take a look at the rest of the Hellraiser franchise. Cheers!